Hi, my name's Jonathan Hicks. I'm back at the Dice Cup, and this evening I'm joined by
Steve.
And we've just finished playing KUNE versus LAKIA. I'm not quite sure if you're pronouncing that, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. But it's a two-player game of Lapine divorce, it says. Now I have to say, this is one of the strangest themes I've ever come across. Essentially, one person is the princess, LAKIA, and the other player is KUNE, the duke. And it's sort of like deck building. You start off with a small hand of cards, so in this case the orange cards represented my starting cards, but as we go through the game you're acquiring more cards which will have various special abilities on, but they're also worth points at the end of the game. You can see at the top left here the numbers in the carrots, so the number of points that I'm getting for having these cards in my deck at the end of the game. In theory, though, it's about, well, we're getting divorced. So we were together, but now we're getting divorced. And all the important members of court here, including the king, for example, the princess's father, the duke's sister, there's a knight, a sorceress. You're trying to persuade them to join your side, to kind of side with you, and you're getting points at the end of the game if they've joined your side. So I'm kind of red in this case. So because I managed to get the king to side with me, I'm getting a whopping 6 points, if you can see that at the end of the game. However, if Steve had persuaded him to join his side, he would only get 1 point actually. So it's quite interesting, the different sides give you different points. So the knight here will give 4 points for Steve's side, but for my side I would get 5 points, and it varies from character to character. Now in terms of how you play the game and take your turns, there's effectively 3 things typically that you can do here. So you can try and persuade somebody to join your side, which is influencing them. So in this case, the sorceress is currently blue, so that's on Steve's side, and I would have to pay the icons at the bottom in order to influence. So you have various cards, and you can see at the bottom you can play the cards. At the start of your round, if you like, you have all the cards in your hand. You're not actually drawing cards, you just have the whole lot. So I could play this. This would give me a crown plus one other thing. So I could maybe pick the sword there. That give me a crown and a sword. And then I'd need a cauldron. There we go, there's a cauldron. So I'd sort of play those. They go to a discard pile. And then I persuade her to not quite join my side, but sort of turn more to my side. Now, if it's already on Steve's side, she actually becomes purple, which is ambivalent. She's not quite sure which side to join. At the start of the game, they're all white, and they're not really on anyone's side, but then you kind of gradually persuade them. So if I were to persuade her again, eventually she would then turn red, and she would join my side. Each time you do that, you get to take a card from, usually there are decks here above each character, and this gets added to your deck. So that's how you're acquiring extra cards, but you're kind of randomly drawing them. And each of these cards will potentially give you special abilities or help you in various other ways. So that's one thing you can do, try and persuade them to join your side, which is the influence. Another thing you can do is counsel. So that's what the carrots here are for. You can only seek counsel from people who are either on your side or ambivalent and haven't quite decided whose side to join yet. So I could decide to influence this one here, and then I use this ability so both players take 1 card from their own discard pile. So this one, which gave me a couple of different symbols that I've used already, I could take it back into my hand, so that's quite handy. And the final thing you can do is some cards just have plot effects on them. So if I find one here, this one for instance says I can convert the knight, which would immediately turn the knight from whatever colour he is directly to my side, and then I'd stick this on the bottom of his deck. So you're trying to use the various abilities, persuade the people to join your side, but also try and acquire as many cards as you can. There's a couple of other things you can do. For example, you can store cards under your character. Some of the black cards will let you do that, and you're getting extra points for cards that you've stored, but then they're kind of out of your hand, if you like, so you can't use them for their abilities anymore. So you have to think about when you want to cash these in to get the points, because obviously you can't use them once you've lost them. But then at the end of the game you count up all the points for the various things, and whoever has the most is the winner. What do we think?
The theme is definitely, like Jonathan said, I've not seen anything like it. You've got a divorce, and it's very, it fits together quite well in terms of the princess's father. If she sides with the princess, well, most of the time he's going to do that. It's a very good thing for him to side with his daughter. So it's just a different amount of points. I'm not sure whether the points are balanced or not, but it's weird. So basically you're trying to influence different people to either stop the other person getting lots of points or for you to get as much as you can. There's a bit of, like, not randomness as such, but some of the cards allow you to kind of reveal the top card of a deck, and if your opponent can guess what type of card it is, whether it's an abbot, a knight, or countess or so on, then you don't get something. But if they fail, you get to store things. And storing is kind of the aim, not necessarily the aim of the game, you're trying to influence people, but you can go down the storing strategy of trying to store as many cards as you can, but every card you store gets you more points at the end, but weakens your deck. If you start storing cards, you know, if you've got no cauldrons left in your deck, then some of the people become really hard to influence. Yeah, so I'd like to play it a few more times just so I can get kind of feel of all the cards in the game. I felt like some of the cards were very powerful, like the one that just immediately converted the knight from red to blue without having going that ambivalent phase. It's a very strong card, but once Jonathan's used it, he's lost it. So being aware of what sort of cards like that are in the game might kind of tailor your strategy. I got heavily beaten here.
Rating?
It's probably not my sort of game necessarily. It's not necessarily a deck builder as such. You do kind of improve your deck, but you kind of don't draw through it. So I'll probably just rate it 6 out of 10.
Okay. Yeah, it's a strange one. It's difficult to pitch because the first time you play it, it is quite difficult to get your head around. There's an awful lot of text to read. You're going to find that learning game takes quite a long time. Once you know what you're doing, though, it would play fairly quickly. In terms of that two-player genre, if you like, particularly aimed at couples, I think, you know, if there's a certain games like Patchwork or the new Codenames Duet, for example, that play well with two, but this fits in that genre, but it's very different from anything else in that genre. So if you play a lot of two-player games, particularly with your significant other, and you want something different, I think this would be a really good choice. It is really unusual. In terms of the actual mechanics of the game, there's a little bit too much randomness for me, as Steve was saying. You're drawing cards off the top of those sort of decks to add to your hand, but you've no idea really what you're going to get. So it's actually quite tricky forming a strategy. You could have just tried this and see what happens. But it's a nice game. I think it'll be on a 6.5. Alright, thanks for watching. That was KUNE versus LAKIA.